Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. As always, 5 days a week. We'll be off Wednesdays and Thursdays during the regular season. Now, remember, Sunday, we usually do our start-sit stream, but there are London games in week 4, 5, and 6. So this weekend, for the next 3 weeks, the start-sit show will be on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern instead of Sunday. So again, if you need a notification on that, go to the RotoWire YouTube page. Go ahead, and I have it pinned to my profile at Jim Coventry NFL on Twitter or X. Go ahead and just bookmark that, and remember, Saturday, not Sunday. And remember, I'll try to give you the why so you can make your best lineup decision. I won't just tell you start A, start B. Do a little more with that. All right, Eagles, Buccaneers. Boy, the Eagles took care of business 25-11. The rain got really sloppy right around halftime and into the second half, so that really did change a little bit of the way the game was going. But Jalen Hurts comes out with a strong fantasy performance, only 28 yards rushing on 10 rushes. So he hasn't been the explosive dynamic runner we saw last year. And so he's not having those huge ceiling games. But look, he threw for 277 in the bad rain. A.J. Brown dropped a couple of touchdowns. One was a pass that Hurts had to throw a little bit high, and Brown should have had it. And then late in the game, he just blatant drop in the end zone. And, with the props with A.J. Brown, I put the thread up yesterday. Remember, these props on the season, I'm winning at a 60% clip so far. 2%, makes you money. But 3 of those just injuries. Like I had week 1, Garrett Wilson, and of course, Aaron Rodgers goes down 4 plays in. I had J.K. Dobbins goes out with an Achilles. But otherwise, process is good. Most of them reasonable. Zay Flowers missed by a couple of yards. DJ Moore missed by 1 yard, and he had a bad drop. But look, we're doing the best we can, and we're winning right now, and hopefully we keep that all season long. But anyway, back to A.J. Brown. You knew he'd get the ball. Squeaky wheel, and I know Jalen Hurts says A.J. Brown's always complaining about not getting the ball, but we knew he'd get the ball. They had that mini bye. They played a week ago Thursday. They come back on a Monday, big rest advantage, but he just dominates targets, 14 targets. He had more targets than Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and he had one less target than those 3 with Zacchaeus. The 3 of those, Brown had 1 fewer target, so he caught 14. He saw 14 of the 37 pass attempts. So that was good. That won't go week to week. That will balance out more. Devontae Smith will certainly have his target games. And probably next week it balances back to 50-50 because they kind of got A.J. Brown his. So DeAndre Swift, we were wondering what the workload would be. Well, in terms of snaps, Swift had the lead for sure. The carries, Gainwell got the clock killers, a lot of those. So don't put too much stock into the 16 carries of Swift to 14 for Gainwell. Right now, it looks like it's Swift's backfield. And my whole thing was they know how talented he is. I thought Gainwell was the starter because they wanted to, spot Swift for, with his injury history for the playoffs. But right now, he looks like the guy, and he's crushing it. 16 carries for $130. Defenses can't load up to stop the run against this team. If they do, Brown, Smith, and Goddard will kill them. So this is going to be sustained. This is going on. Again, Devontae Smith, 4 for 28. Don't worry about it. The targets, A.J. Brown got his. Now, second week in a row, Goddard gets his targets at 5 catches. Last week he had 6. I think 22 a week ago, 41 yards this week. Not killing it, but at least now he's had a couple of PPR floor games of 8 and 9. Eventually that's going to work. He's a great player. It will come around. But again, the Eagles looked better. The rainstorm took some away, but they do look like they fixed a few things. Now it helped that the Buccaneers were without Carlton Davis, and then Jamel Dean left the game once and left it for good later. So they were without their corners. And I don't think they attacked them relentlessly enough without their corners. But again, they didn't need to. They won easily. The Buccaneers, Buccaneers, they really don't have the proper personnel to attack the middle of the field. They're not consistently using Godwin in the slot. They're using a lot of 2 receiver sets. And when they do, they're putting the ancillary receivers, Devin Tompkins, Trey Palmer, they're putting them in the slot. They really, if you game planned this game well, you would have put Godwin in the slot all along. And that would have been where you could attack them. But it was basically, they went weakness against weakness, and they didn't flip the script. Mike Evans, great. Got it done again. Some beautiful catches. So Baker Mayfield, look, 146 and a touchdown. He did throw a pick as well. But realistically, he's going to be a 2-quarterback starter all year. He'll be fine. He's not going to have a lot of monster games, but his floor should be decent for 2-quarterback leagues. Of course, not in a 1-quarterback league. You're not starting him there. And Chris Godwin hasn't had the big games yet. There have been some misconnections. In the first couple of games, there were missed touchdowns. Yesterday, there were some opportunities. But, 6 games, 6 points PPR, it's a floor. He has 10 points in a couple other games. So, but that's coming around. He's doing well. It's just some misconnections that gets cleaned up. And Evans, of course, right now is just doing so well. 17 PPR points. This is very good for both of them. Cade Otton, it should have been a good game for him, and he had 1 catch early, and I thought they would attack the middle of the field. He did draw a pass interference later, but that said, they just didn't throw him the ball enough in this game. They should have. Rachaad White, we know what he is. I mean, less than 3 yards per carry. The Eagles are not this world beater run defense, but the line is not good. White doesn't break many tackles. He did catch 3 passes for 24. So, that said, he gets you about 8 PPR points, maybe 8.5, something like that. So fine enough, but that's what you're going to get out of him. You're not going to get a whole lot. My guess is there won't be too many touchdowns here. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button if you're on RotoWire YouTube. And if you can give me a follow at Jim Coventry NFL, that'd be great. We put up player threads. We put up betting threads, do a lot of stuff during the week. Later in the week, we usually put those up. But again, would appreciate any support you could throw this way. Bengals and Rams. So Ty's in the house. Yeah, we'll talk about this game right now. Yeah, we did have Puka got a 25 or 30-yard catch late in the game, which was nice. His last 2 minutes, it was garbage time, and he was able to at least put together a 12-point PPR game. But fortunately for garbage time, right? Because had he not got that, he would still have been okay. He would have gotten you about 7 points. But that big catch late was huge when, the Bengals were up by more than 1 score. We can start with the Rams. So Matthew Stafford. Lou Anarumo did a really nice job of putting pressure on Stafford. Stafford got a couple interceptions. One was a tip ball, but he was under pressure. There was one that he got away with, and we've seen it before. Matthew Stafford's under heavy pressure. It could cause problems, and it was enough pressure. And his receivers do not typically generate the type of separation that blitz beaters would need. And so if the play's unstructured, it definitely works for Stafford. But again, Lou Anarumo, defensive coordinator of the Bengals, cooked up a very good game plan, took advantage. Kyren Williams, going to continue to see the volume. Not a big game, but 65 total yards and a couple of catches. So there was that. 7 more targets. He less than 4 yards per carry. That's going to be it. He's not a good runner, but he's a compiler. And he played almost all the snaps again. He was over other than that, maybe 97%. Top of my head, I didn't copy that column in, but he was playing every snap. So look, running back 2, volume based, you're going to keep going to him. Those targets certainly help too. Ronnie Rivers is not being used. Zach Evans inactive again, so they clearly don't see him in the mix. So in terms of the receivers, we got 1 more week, possibly till Cooper Kupp comes back. He'll miss week 4. He could be back in week 5. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Tutu Atwell continues to get it done. 9 targets a game. And now that'll go down a little bit when Cooper Kupp comes back. But Tutu Atwell has been schemed up very well. He had a nice 22-yard run as well. But Sean McVay just really knows how to put his players in position for success. Van Jefferson to get a deep shot. It was the only ball he caught on 3 attempts. But I don't think you could reliably start him in fantasy. Tyler Higbee did come through at 71 yards, caught all 5 of his targets. But until this game, basically he's like the forgotten man as the offense runs through Nakua and through Tutu Atwell. So there's that. But Matthew Stafford, again, he was playing great. But now it's 2 weeks in a row with 49ers. Buzz saw they scored 10 points, scored 16 against the Bengals. This is probably more what we're going to see. They'll get some yardage because McVay will scheme that. But at some point, the lack of overall talent around him, it's going to be a problem. We'll see if Kupp can elevate that. And then the Bengals, look, they were protecting Joe Burrow's calf. The line did a nice job of holding up. They were max protecting on some opportunities when they could. But they do run a lot of 3-receiver sets, so they can't do as much as they'd like. So basically, Burrow just got it out quick. And the advantage he had, especially with Jamar Chase against the corners, T. Higgins only caught 2 of his 8 targets. Just one of those games. He's had 2 bad ones now, and he's getting targets. That's going to get fixed. T. Higgins is a great player. Burrow is just a little bit off right now, and I think it's really more that. And, we hope Burrow gets a little better each week. We'll see how that shakes out. But, yeah, I wouldn't push the panic button on T. Higgins. He's legitimately a 1,200 yard type receiver, and it's just the ebbs and flows. And right now, I'm not going to worry about them. But Jamar Chase, it was nice to see him after 2 sub-40-yard games come back with 141 yards. That was nice to see. Yards per catch, about 12 yards. So he had 1 long play on a yard run after the catch, but it was just getting the ball in his hands. Win quick, get it out. It was very smart. Joe Mixon, I thought he'd be used more as a receiver, but realistically, Burrow was just getting the ball to his receivers. 32 targets to his top 3 receivers out of 49 passes. Just, again, zipping it out quick. So Mixon only gets targeted twice, but he does rush 19 for 65 and a touchdown. We know the drill right now on Joe Mixon. He's a compiler at this point. He's not a 4-yard per carry running back. He's barely been there the last 3 or 4 years, right around there, but he's not. He's not a 4-yard per carry running back, but he gets volume. There's nobody really to challenge him. Travion Williams got 1 carry, not really much of an issue. As it goes, Burrow did not have a good fantasy day, 259 and a pick, but look, what are you going to do? He's compromised right now. And if you ended up drafting a strong QB2, like let's say you went Burrow, and let's say you did draft another one, some leagues you draft 2 quarterbacks, a lot of leagues you don't. And if you had like a Jared Goff, Jared Goff at home over Burrow right now, those are reasonable choices to make until we see Burrow get back to form. But all that said, again, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. If you want a free trial at RotoWire, get you 2 free days, go to rotowire.com/Jim. No credit card needed, no shenanigans. See what we're all about. All right, let's go over some quarterback risers. Bottom of the hour, Brandon Kravitz is coming in. Going to talk some waiver wires with him. So, risers, I was very impressed with Deshaun Watson's outing. I made excuses for him. Week 1, bad weather, Cincinnati, didn't look good, but neither did Joe Burrow. Week 2, Pittsburgh, pass rush was insane. They lost Nick Chubb. Watson didn't look good. He had a positive matchup. He did extremely well. Completed all but 6 passes. He threw for 289. Should have been over 300. Amari Cooper catches this ball about a foot in bounds. He's getting ready to take the ball another 25 yards for a touchdown. There was a defender there, but it looks like he had an angle to beat him easily. And the referee blew an inadvertent whistle. And so Cooper got dinged on an extra yards and a touchdown. Watson got dinged on a 300-yard game and maybe a 3rd touchdown. But no picks. 2 interceptions. He only ran for 16 yards, but we're not complaining. He was getting it done through the air. He was throwing with timing and anticipation. And, nice deep pass. Receiver was open, but hey, there were passes he had the under through with the bad weather in week 1. So we'll take that. Deshaun Watson right now, I'm optimistic. CJ Stroud. Of course, we're excited about CJ Stroud. Been without 4 of his starting linemen the last 2 weeks, without 3 in week 1. But in the last 2 weeks, averaging over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looks like the guy's the real deal. Coming out the gate, he has 3 good receivers. Robert Woods does his job. Nico Collins, a bit of a down game, but certainly we've already seen the alpha qualities. Take Dell in the slot. Very, very good slot receiver coming out the gate as a rookie. And this team is going to grow and build together around CJ Stroud. And I don't know if he's going to be an elite quarterback, but I don't know that he's not going to be. Right now, I think he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback, and we'll see how high his ceiling is. But, man, with no protection and because of the line, no running game, and game script certainly helps his fantasy numbers for sure, when they're trailing. But CJ Stroud, very excited about the young man. Let's look at some running back risers. Zack Moss. So we tried to pitch him week 1 when he was injured. Pick him up. I was playing the last 4 games of the season last year. He was a full-time back, averaging 4.8 yards per carry on an Indy team that was really struggling. He was playing extremely well. He's playing at least that well, if not better this year. Now, he didn't have the full snap share of 2 weeks, so we played every snap but 1. He played 76 here, which was fine. But he went from 18 carries and 4 catches 2 weeks ago to 30 carries and 3 targets. And he caught a ridiculous end zone pass in coverage over the shoulder. Didn't see that in his game. So he rushed for 122. He has touchdowns 2 weeks in a row, over 100 scrimmage yards 2 weeks in a row. So that's the way to go. Ty asked about rest of the season, Collins or Dell. I think Collins has the most stable path to weekly production because he is running those clear alpha routes and he's getting inside leverage. And I think he's the player that will eventually, they will continue to go to. Dell is going to be solid as well, but Collins, I think, is a legitimate wide receiver too going forward. I think due to the nature of Dell's game, there's going to be a lot more peaks and valleys. He'll have his really good games, but I think there's going to be a number of games in which he struggles. Collins looks like he's the star that they thought they traded up to get 3 years ago in the draft. He really is looking that way as long as he stays healthy, and he's been so far, so we'll keep it that way. But I do like Collins significantly over Dell. But again, both should be on fantasy rosters for sure. Obviously, risers, Mostert and Achane. The only thing I want to say, though, is this. The offense was ridiculous. And Denver, we talked about the problems they had. That they're an awful defense. They were in the direct sun while Miami was in the shade in the super hot and super humid temperatures. And they had no chance. And they looked like a team that wasn't even out there. Now, Miami's still a wonderful team. They're an amazing offense. We're not throwing any shade on Mostert and Achane because Mostert had been playing very well going into this game. Just again, if you're expecting 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, 3 from Mostert, 4 from Achane, obviously we're not getting that week to week. But here's the thing. I don't think the genie's going to get put back in the bottle on Achane. I think that now he gets significant work each week. I think he and Mostert will be a 1-2 punch right now. Achane, we were concerned about his size and his usage. But I think that Mike McDaniel uses the speed to get his players open quickly enough. I think that they can mitigate him taking a ton of big hits in the middle of the field. I think they can get him away from that. So I think that they're going to be able to work with that. So right now, Mostert is a strong RB2. And I'm not going to call him an RB1 yet because, again, I just worry about the workload. He had 13 carries and 7 targets, which was beautiful. The week prior, he had 18 carries. The workload's great. And you know what? Right now, I guess as long as he's healthy, I guess pencil him in as a top 15 running back. Just pencil him as a top 15 running back. He's playing so well with the offense. Achane right now, it's really tough because comes off 2 touches for 9 yards. Then he goes for 230 yards and 4 touchdowns. So I think right now we don't know exactly what his full role is going to be, but I think right now you reasonably just got to say, look, let's just assume he's in a top 24 running backs and maybe there's going to be a lot more. Maybe he's going to be this insane producer. It's just hard to take an outlier week like we saw and say, well, that's what we're getting. It's just tough. And and I believe in Achane. I believe in his speed. I'm not questioning it for a second. But again, we just got to see when they face a little more competent opponent, when Jalen Waddle's back in the offense. Obviously, they had to funnel a lot of offense in other places. Waddle only gets 5 or 6 targets, but he's so pivotal in what they do. So it'll be interesting to see. But again, wheels up on these guys. James Conner, talk about him frequently. Just want to point out, 100 scrimmage yards 2 weeks in a row, scored a touchdown 2 weeks in a row. He's going to miss time at some point. His history says that. I hope that doesn't happen. But nonetheless, you're starting Conner. He plays San Francisco this week. Well, I bet some people sat him against Dallas. Just play him. Just play him. He gets enough done. He hasn't gotten a lot of targets. Might be the week he gets some targets. He's looking great. And honestly, the Arizona run blocking is much better than I had anticipated. There was this one particular run where they had a couple people seal, and that's something they hadn't really had. And it was a thing of beauty. And Conner took full advantage. He's a very good running back who's played without good offensive lines for much of his career, because he was in that stage of Pittsburgh when Pittsburgh was at, that line was disintegrating. So yeah, just play Conner. It may not be an upside game against the 49ers, but I can't say he doesn't score. And I can't say he doesn't score twice. Not predicting it, but Conner is going to get you enough to say, you know what? All right, keep him in the lineup, matchup proof. Let's roll with it. Let's see. Let's see here. Deep Thug, should I trade Hockenson and Amon-Ra St. Brown to get back Mixon and Kelsey? Really, Hawkins is getting a ton of targets, so there's that. But you know what? If you're desperate for a running back, I would do it. But Mixon's a compiler, remember that. And so they're going to be down weeks because he's not efficient. So if he has weeks where he's not getting a lot of touches, the efficiency drops. So if you need a running back badly enough, it would be fine to do it. But otherwise, I would probably be prone to keep Hawkinson and Amon-Ra because they both have high floors and good, reasonable ceilings. But it's close. You got Kelsey in that deal. So honestly, it's 50-50. Personal preference. If you need the running back, make it. If not, probably don't rattle the cage. But if you need the running back, then it becomes like a definite do because you need a running back. And Higgins for DK, 50-50 on that one too. They'll both post probably similar stats on this season. They'll both be very close. Targets, everything across the board will be very close between them. So who could you trade them for? It all depends on the market, right? I mean, whatever someone's willing to pay. So it's tough to say. Look at your opponent's rosters and make an offer and see if you can get someone to move. And then, and Chad asked about Dalton. I don't know what the team wants to do with Bryce Young. If they determined during this injury and they look back on his first 2 games, if they determined that they want him to learn, they should. But urgency in NFL offices is to get the guys on the field. That's usually where the urgency's at. So they're more likely to play Bryce Young than not. You got to get him developed at some point, right? And as long as he's not taking a million hits like Sam Howell, but Dalton can run an NFL offense. That's for sure. He totally can run an NFL offense. And we advocated him for DFS last week. That's 3 weeks in a row. My low price guy hit. I gave Mayfield 3 weeks ago. He went for 300 and a couple touchdowns. A week prior, went with CJ Stroud, 384 and 2. This week we went with Dalton. He went over 300, and I think he threw a couple, if I remember right. But yeah. So I mean, Dalton can run an NFL offense. If he has a bad matchup, he's in trouble. But I didn't think Seattle was a bad matchup, so that certainly helped. No pass rush, which Dalton will stare out a pass rush, but then no Tariq Woolen. So I think Carolina realizes that they're not winning anything this year. It wouldn't help the future of their franchise to get Dalton out there. They'd be better off getting a better draft pick. So my guess is no. That's my guess. My guess is that they are a building franchise right now. The offensive line's a problem too, but that's another story for another day. Brian, Swift or Cook having Swift's injury history, if he's going to be used to this level, it'll be interesting to see if he makes it through. But assuming they're both healthy, Swift's a better player. Swift has a better offensive line. They both are going to see 3 yards before contact because opponents got to worry about the passing game. So I would say I would rather have Cook because I don't know if he's injury prone or not. He hasn't played enough. And but I would definitely like to talk that DeAndre Swift, because of health. That's the only reason I put him away. Tyler, man, thanks for being a super user here, man. How awesome of you. So start Goff or Love if Burrow isn't back. Oh, Tyler, I don't dig into the following week matchups. Like I'm still grinding numbers from the previous week. Let me at least look at the schedule for you. Let me look at the schedule ahead of time. But I really will get into my deep dives. I start opening the book on next week on Wednesday. That's when I start turning the calendar forward. It's kind of the life of a fantasy analyst. We always have to look backwards before we can look forward. But let's take a look for you here. All right. So week 4 schedule we have. So, all right. Without opponents. So Goff. Now, when Goff's at home, he's on the road this time in Green Bay. That's not a good matchup. Jared Goff was a drastically different quarterback on the road last year. Even the Kansas City game, just drastically different. You get 1 or 0 touchdowns. He had one game last year where he had multiple touchdowns. It was a weird game in like week 16. Jordan Love in that same game. It's going to be interesting to see if he gets his weapons back. It's a Thursday night game. So when we're talking about Love, I think Detroit you could beat them in the passing game. Their corners aren't really emerging. Emmanuel Mosley's been out. Kirby Joseph, their safety, was out and on a short week. I wonder if they still miss him. Now, Burrow is going to play Tennessee. And the problem with Jordan Love is he's a Thursday game. That's the problem. So right now, if there's any inclination, I don't see why Burrow wouldn't start. He played last night. I wouldn't see any reason to avoid him. So I would go right back to Burrow because you're playing Tennessee. Tennessee is what we call that pass funnel defense. You don't run on them at all. Joe Mixon won't be able to run on them. End of story, full stop. But they're horrible in coverage. And their pressure is interior pressure, but the Bengals line can withstand that. So Burrow is an excellent start this week because we saw yesterday, he'll get it out quick and his receivers can win. And I think there's tons of yards after the catch. So thank you, Tyler. I'm going to recommend Burrow. And if there's any definitive word that he's hurt, I would go Love over Goff. All right. Let's get to some. We got Brandon Kravitz coming by me. I want to go through a few more risers for everybody. And Anvar, welcome. Deep Thug, welcome. All right. Michael Pittman. So look, his targets have been great. I had no idea they would be able to get him the ball as often as that. They're double-digit targets per game. There hasn't been a ceiling, but that's okay. He had a 39-yard touchdown screen that was perfectly blocked in week 1, 8 for 56 in week 2, 9 for 77 in week 3. Look, if we're going to get 13.6, 16.7 PPR points, you can't argue with that. Where you drafted him, that was what you were hoping to get. You probably weren't hoping to get much more than that. So this is good. Michael Pittman's going to continue to flourish because they've made it a point to show his importance in the offense, and he can win. Michael Pittman is a contested catch player. He has a big frame. He can get yards after the catch, and so I fully expect him to continue to be a big part of the offense. Jakobi Meyers. Look, Raiders defense is terrible. They have Max Crosby, and that's about it. So they're going to play a negative game script most weeks, and they're going to have to throw. And now with 2 games in the books, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo throw Jakobi Meyers double-digit targets. Myers, I missed the S on that, sorry. And Devontae Adams is certainly going to get his, but they can't only throw to him. And with game script, they're going to throw way more than they want to. And so, yeah, Myers is going to be viable. He's not going to have a huge game every week, but I think his floor in this offense is incredibly high. And Josh McDaniels has already shown he's worked with Myers before, but he has the inclination to get him open. And Myers is blew. It was obviously when they signed him, he blew way past Hunter Renfrow, who's not even a thing. He was on the field. I didn't want to say he ran like 28 routes, but it's Adams and Myers, and that's it. And for a team that's going to trail, Myers is going to be a strong fantasy play. He's probably, like a top 32-ish receiver right now. And that's no hyperbole. Keenan Allen, obviously he went off. And he's going to continue to do great. Oh, I had a question about Fab from Richard about how much if you had Mike Williams. Now, Palmer obviously is going to get a major uptick in targets. And I know they had Quentin Johnson on the bench, but they're going to have to get him up to speed really quick. They wanted to bring him along slowly. But if you have nobody else depth-wise to replace Williams in your lineup, extrapolated for a full season in this offense, I would expect Palmer is about a 950-yard receiver with about 5 touchdowns and probably about 70 catches. That's a strong play, right? That's like top 30 again. That top 32-ish number, right around that top 32-ish number. He's right around there. And so based on that, if you're desperate for help, you could go 20% on him if you're desperate for help. And you lost Mike Williams, there's a hole in your lap. I wouldn't go more than 20% because there's a chance Quentin Johnson develops, and there's a chance that we see more from the tight end Gerald Everett, and Austin Eckler will be back. So, but still, he's going to see a big uptick in volume. Like I said, about 950-yard player on the full season extrapolation. So, excellent there. All right, let's see. So by Keenan Allen, the only thing I'm worried about is Mike Williams was playing in the slot way more than last year. Defense had to account for him. Defenses are not scared at all of Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson. Keenan Allen is going to see heavier coverage, but he still can win. Keenan Allen's an amazing NFL player. But the yardage we had last week, the insane yardage he had, we're not going to continue to see that. But he's still going to be a great player. I move him up to like a top 12 receiver right now in PPR because, again, full season extrapolation without Williams, we're looking at 115 catch guy. Again, health, you always have to worry about that. 1,300 yard type, 1,200, 1,300 yard type. So he's still going to be a great play. So I'm very excited about Keenan Allen. All right. Brandon Kravitz is in the house. Brandon, how did week 3 treat you?
Not too bad. I think week 3 is we're starting to round into form here. I did have one league where I look back on week 1 and I may have dumped Achane, or as we're calling him now, onto the waiver wire. So I got to do some work to get that guy back on the roster. Not a bad day if you're a Dolphins fan on Sunday.
Oh my goodness, it was insane. Just incredible watching that. It's funny. One of the 2 bets, I always give individual team point bets. Those are 2 I gave. One of the 2 was Miami over 27.5 points, had it by halftime. Oh my gosh. One of the things I said, though, was Denver was going into the extreme heat. They are terrible against the run and against the pass. But what Miami did to them, I don't know if Denver recovers from that one in the next 3 years. Brandon, we're here to talk some waivers, but tell everybody now and at the end where they can find you, what you do.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of that good stuff, at Brandon Kravitz. So we'll try and stay active across the board, and you can always reach me on any of those platforms if you have any questions about anything going on. Also, daily on the RotoWire Podcast Network, the Fantasy Bites podcast. It's 5 minutes or less, hard-hitting, all the info you need to know for that day, injuries going on, and all of that good stuff. And I'm on daily in Orlando, Florida as well, all part of the iHeart Network. You can catch me live from 3 to 6 p.m. I share the link, so if you're not in Orlando, that's fine. You can still listen. We talk about sports on a national level from 3 to 6 p.m.
Brandon brings you to football goods, but dude, man, you've got that classic radio voice. That's amazing, amazing stuff. And it totally, when you said iHeart Radio, and you've said that every week you've been on, but it's like, yeah, totally. I mean, you bring out the goods and you got the voice, 2 for 2. Glad you're here. Wow. Anyway, let's talk some waivers.
Too kind, Jim. You are too kind. So should I get the obvious out of the way first?
Go ahead. Get the obvious out of the way.
All right. So usually we go position by position. I'm just going to give you the top 3 names that should be 100% rostered at this point. CJ Stroud, quarterback of the Houston Texans. He's been a top 12 quarterback so far this season, and it's not fluky. He obviously looks comfortable in the pocket. He's got weapons to throw to, and they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. Now, the other obvious would be his top target over the last 2 weeks, rookie Tank Dell, who he lobbied to get onto the team in the first place. So this guy's been on, for nerds like us that eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff in May, he's been on our radar from day one. It's great to see him pop off early in the season. There should not be a league where he is not rostered. This is a legit flex play moving forward. And then we already mentioned his name, part of that Dolphins backfield, which is becoming quite problematic for defenses, Achane. And yes, he did change his name. I feel like I have to say that at least for the next week. The report had come out. No longer is it Achane, it's Achane. And so it's a broadcaster's worst nightmare, but the guy's putting up over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Good luck finding that on the waiver wire. I will say this, Jim, before we analyze, he is a good example of why, as hard as it is, this is more of a lesson for the future because many of you probably already blew your budget. This is why you save your money, because we've had an example each of the first 3 weeks of why you should spend 75% of your budget on somebody that's sitting out there on the waiver wire, assuming that you're in a fab league. Puka Nacua week 1 and Achane this week. So this is why, for those that were able to, that operated with a little bit more skepticism, they're the ones who are sitting pretty this week.
It's funny you said Achane. I can't even say it right now because I'm so used to saying Achane. But when you get 230 yards and 4 touchdowns, you can get called anything you want. Change your name. You can call you, A Money. You can call you anything you want, man. Just keep putting that up. But you're right. And here's the thing. And you know this because you said you dropped him in the league, and I understood it. He had 2 touches the prior week. And
he was inactive in week 1. I dropped him after week 1. I did pick up Puka Nacua. It felt like a genius move. And now, look, I've got to go and reach back into the wire. This is a good example. I mean, we all live this. We sometimes overreact to what we see or don't see. And they drafted this guy to be a part of the backfield. He's now given an opportunity. And, so I'm fighting for it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk some other quarterback. You already mentioned CJ Stroud. What if somebody, and we had a question, CJ Stroud or Geno the rest of your Kai asked. Why don't you go ahead and answer that one, Brandon?
Yeah, I like CJ Stroud. I'm loving the poise that I'm seeing from him so far. And keep in mind what he did this past weekend, over 350 yards, multiple touchdowns. He looked so comfortable. I love the guys that he's throwing the ball to, and he's missing starting offensive linemen. So he's doing this not at 100% around him. He's dealing with his own injury. So CJ Stroud for me, definitely the guy. Geno's been fine, but CJ Stroud gets me way more excited. If you're in a super, yeah, go ahead.
And Stroud missing 4 linemen himself, and he's getting it done. How crazy is that?
It really is. Do you agree? Are you on Stroud over
100%,
Geno rest of the year?
100%. Yeah, I moved CJ Stroud. He's like quarterback 14 in my rest of season rankings, and I'm really struggling to want to move him a little bit higher. But I have some players ahead of him that I really can't move down yet. But give me another week or two, and he may crawl inside that top 10 because, like you said, shootouts every week. He's got 3 receivers, and he's going to get some of his line back soon. Imagine that.
Yeah. Right, exactly. I've got the Super Flex League that you and I are in. We did our draft in Vegas. Maybe we relive that again someday. Where I've got Jalen Hurts as quarterback 1. It's a super flex. So I've got Russell Wilson that I'm dying to take out of my lineup, but he's got the Bears this weekend. How can I bench Russell Wilson? Because I've got CJ Stroud sitting on the bench. So these are some of the tough decisions that now Stroud is forcing us to make in fantasy.
And before we get to another quarterback, you're going to pitch one. Say Charlene's in the house. Welcome, Charlene. Glad to see you here. What's one more quarterback? Who's one more quarterback we could look at, Brandon, this week?
I think this is more of a super flex play than anything else, but Jameis Winston's definitely somebody you should have on your radar. I don't think Jameis has that much fantasy viability left in the tank, but he does have weaponry in that offense, and he's going up against his former team on Sunday. So a little added juice there going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who discarded him a few years ago. So he could be a guy, quarterback 2, if you're desperate.
And Carlton Davis missed the last 2 games, and Jamel Dean was out, in, and then out for good yesterday. I think he has some kind of a serious shoulder injury. So they may be down 1 or 2 corners in that game. And man, Jameis Winston, like you said, that even adds a little bit of fire to it. He's in a great spot here. How about running back? You already obviously told us I can't even say his name now. Now you got me so cross. I'm calling him Achane. You know what? Changing in the offseason. Anyway, who else you got at running back? Oh, looks like Brandon froze on us. All right. While Brandon's unfree. Yeah, good. I hear your voice.
My internet got me. I apologize.
We're good. Other running backs besides Achane.
Let's go Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle's this is a name that you didn't have on your radar when the season started, but this is the clear handcuff to Tony Pollard. 7 touches in Sunday's game, and he had a touchdown. I think he'd be the guy if Pollard misses time. And if you've learned anything over the last couple of weeks, please allow it to be the lesson of the fantasy handcuff. For a clear handcuff in a run-heavy offense where the backup would come in and have some sort of life to them, Rico Dowdle appears to be that guy. Somebody I'm a lot less excited about is Melvin Gordon, but if you need a back for this weekend, I guess you could do worse than a Ravens running back that's probably going to receive double-digit touches. Keep in mind, he only had 10 carries for 32 yards, so he's not the Melvin Gordon of the past, but if you need a running back, he might end up getting the start.
And one disclaimer on that, if Gus Edwards is unable to go with the concussion because Gordon got almost all of his work after Gus was knocked out of the game. Gus was looking good as usual. But like you said, Brandon, with a concussion, we know there's probably a 50% chance or less that he plays. So, yeah, definitely stash Melvin Gordon like Brandon said because there's a good chance. Volume is volume, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's a guy that I would only want to pick up if he's going to play, though. I want no part of I don't want no part of having Melvin Gordon on my roster as a just in case. If I like, for example, I'd pick him up if you have the roster space to do it. And you might need a starting running back. Maybe Gus Edwards is your RB2. If I found out on Sunday that Gus Edwards was going to get the start, I would drop Melvin Gordon for somebody else immediately.
At receiver, you obviously told us about Tank Dell already. Who else you looking at?
Let's look at Josh Palmer of the LA Chargers. He's the guy I think that you should be owning at this point over Quentin Johnston. I know Johnston is that first-round capital, but the Chargers are desperate for success. They have no time to break in a rookie, especially when the guy that's in front of him is playing just fine. Palmer's average catch on Sunday went 16.5 yards. Johnston was 5. So Justin Herbert loves to throw the ball deep down the field. He needs that target to open up this offense. It's Josh Palmer, not Quentin Johnston right now. So he'd be one of those guys I'd look at. And I like Josh Downs. He's emerged as the number 2 for Michael Pittman with the Indianapolis Colts. 8 catches, 57 yards. He had a team-high 12 targets on Sunday. Downs has earned twice the number of targets as Alec Pierce this season, and that kind of volume gives you a nice, safe floor as a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I mean, especially in all leagues, but especially those PPR leagues. I mean, he's been gold for not being drafted in many leagues, so great call on that. How about in Kansas City? You got one of those guys maybe popping up?
Yeah, Rashee Rice is somebody that I was excited about coming out of college. He was an absolute stud at SMU. Little background on me. I live in Orlando, so I've been quite familiar with American Athletic Conference football the last couple of years, and that's where Rashee Rice played his college ball. He dominated UCF in the times that I saw him go up against UCF on a personal level. So I've had my eye on him for a while. Then you see him land on the Chiefs roster, and I got really excited. Wide receivers that get drafted in round 2, we could go through a laundry list of guys that have really popped off being drafted in that range. So great quarterback, obviously great offense. Was he going to get the targets? He's been getting the work the last couple of weeks, and he had 2 plays in Sunday's game, the blowout against the Bears, where he was tackled right at the goal line. If he scores 2 touchdowns, just imagine the conversation we're having. Rashee Rice needs to be on your roster. He's a definite stash candidate. Still a little queasy about starting him, but he's definitely a guy I want on my rosters.
And Brandon, I was trying to look up a stat for when somebody was asking a question, and I don't know if you mentioned this, but Rashee Rice was tackled inside the 1 yard line twice in the last game. If you mentioned that, sorry, but that was huge. I mean, he was getting red zone looks, and that's it. The question was about Josh Downs. Was it Minshew? No. It was 3 games. He had 7 targets in the opener, 79% of the snaps. He had 5 targets in the second game, 75% of the snaps, and then 12 targets. So, yeah, it was certainly elevated, but that was a wild game late, and it went to overtime as well. So, but he is seeing regular targets. Brandon points out that he's been productive all year. Yeah, it was a little better, but those ebbs and flows certainly happen as well. They
need another guy in that offense to relieve the work that Michael Pittman has become a target monster. So it can't all go his way. He's playing great, so he's going to draw double teams. Who else is going to get that work? We thought it would be Alec Pierce. It's not. It's Josh Downs, and he's a lot quicker. So I think there's a lot of upside there, long touchdowns and stuff like that we love as fantasy owners.
Brandon, throw us a tight end we could look at here.
I'm going to go back to the well with the LA Chargers. Gerald Everett sort of playing off of that loss to Mike Williams. Unfortunate he's out for the year, but that's a big void to replace in LA. So I think they'll look to multiple sources to get it done. Why not Gerald Everett? He's got the skill set to do it. At least 7 PPR points the last 2 weeks, which is more than we could say about the fantasy abyss that is Kyle Pitts, who actually led the Falcons in catches this week and still big fat dud.
You know, Jonnu Smith has outproduced Pitts 2 weeks in a row. He had like more targets. That is insane. And it was nice that Pitts had 9 targets. So I'm definitely not going to cry about that. But the fact that Jonnu Smith is seeing like equal work, that man, I tell you what, Arthur Smith hates us. There's no doubt. Hey, before you give us a defense, Charlene's giving us a kicker. She wants Matt Gay. She's been talking about for days. 4 50-yard bombs in a game winner. Look, the Colts are going to be in field goal range a lot. Their offense is probably going to break down in the red zone more than most. And that is a good case for adding a kicker. So you're in a kicker league. Matt Gay, if he's out there, go ahead and get him. That's Charlene Gehrig's call right there. Brandon, give us a defense we could look at.
I've abandoned kickers in fantasy. I'm almost 100% across the board in leagues that don't have kickers. I'm almost there.
Yes.
About 1 league to go. All right, DST, let's go with the Cincinnati Bengals. They finished as one of the top 5 scoring defenses this week, shutting down an elite quarterback in the process. Trey Hendrickson is an absolute menace, and they get a bad Titans offensive line that they get to feast on this weekend. I think it could be another big game for the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that is clearly in desperation mode not to fall to 1-3 here.
You know, on a side note, you talk about Tennessee, and Derrick Henry has overcome some bad offensive lines. The lines got worse and worse the last few years. Last year, it wasn't good. He overcame it. I don't know this year if he can overcome it. 11 for 20. Again, the Cleveland's been great. 25 for 79 against the Chargers, who can't stop the run. It was like 3 yards per carry. Now, he did have barely 4 yards per carry against the Saints. What's going on with Derrick Henry? Is he on the back nine with no help? He can't get it done anymore?
I don't think defenses have to respect anything else that's going on with Tennessee right now. And Derrick Henry is a monster, but he is still a human being. And there's only so much that this guy can do. So he'll still have his big games because he's a Hall of Fame talent and he's going to produce, but it's tough because he's in an offense right now. Just picture yourself as a defensive coordinator. You got the Titans coming up on Sunday. Where does your film study start?
Yeah.
Where does it end, by the way? Because it probably starts and ends with Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill doesn't have it anymore. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't create separation. There's just not a lot to worry about. So you can put your DBs out on an island, stack the box, and it just makes it really problematic. Then you're adding that extra pressure to the front that also isn't good with Tennessee. I just hope for Derrick Henry's sake. I don't know if they'll do it or if he wants it because he feels like a Titans lifer. I would love to see a deadline trade for this guy.
I was just going to say, trade him to the Browns.
Yes, free Derrick Henry. We should make shirts for this. Yes. We'll make shirts, and and he'll be on the Browns. And I could tape back together those Super Bowl tickets I ripped up after he got hurt. Oh my gosh, Brandon! Before I ask people to remind you where to find you, remember programming note: we do the start sit show every Sunday, but there are London games week 4, 5, and 6. So this week, the start sit show will be on Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern. That is pinned to my Twitter profile at Jim Coventry NFL. You can create a notification there if you need to do that. Brandon, again, remind everybody where they can find you and hear your work. So we got a lot going on. Blessed to do so. I will also say I'm going to start with something that I didn't mention at the front end of our conversation. I also do a fantasy football show on Sundays that airs all throughout the state of Florida, Orlando, Tampa, Miami. We're everywhere from 10 to 11 a.m. And you can stream that wherever you are on the iHeartRadio app. You can also find that link on Sunday at Brandon Kravitz. So you check out Jim on Saturday and you can come and hop in on Sunday to my live show. It's called The Fantasy Fix. We've been doing this for the last 5-6 years. At Brandon Kravitz is where you can find me across all social platforms, and I host the Fantasy Bites podcast on RotoWire, keeping you up to date 5 minutes or less every single day, need-to-know information, and then I tack on a bet for that day on every single episode as well.
And the last thing I'll say, what I like is your Sunday show. When I have mine, we don't overlap. Yours ends when mine starts. So guess what? We can pitch both of them.
Let's do it. Exactly. Don't want to step on your toes, Jim. You're a legend.
Oh, man. All right. Whatever. I know, but thank you. Everybody, thanks for your time. Brandon, thank you. Brandon's back every Tuesday. Don't miss him. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we will talk soon.